flush out all the shit, son.
If you've not broken the law, which is harm, loss, fraud, then everything will be a statute or act. They'll ask you your name, just say to them, am I being detained or am I free to go? And that's all you have to say. I'll tell you what to look up online. Look up information regarding free man on the land. No. This is all the law information that's coming out. To try and get rid of all that deception that's going out there.
Understanding the cipher, TV, devilish, pipe.
If you're on the darkcityradio.com link, there is a chat link just above the radio. It's in yellow. You click that and you can come in the chat room. You can ask us questions, try and be a bit more interactive. Now, we had Kevin on the show a little while back talking about the ITCCS, and he's here to talk about it more again tonight. Now, what's happened recently? Well, a lot's gone on since, hasn't it, Kevin? Welcome to the show again.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be back.
So what's been happening in the past few weeks? Because a lot has gone on with serving legal paperwork and things like that on... one of them is in RCMP Inspector Peter Montigue.
Yeah, well, that's just up at ITCCS.org today. He's one of the people named as 30 defendants in the original case about genocide in Canada. And as people probably know if they follow the site, the common law jury found these people guilty. We gave them over a week to respond, and they didn't. And so international citizens arrest warrants were posted on March 4th. And one of the clergymen who work with us, Joshua Lemons, went to try to serve this arrest warrant. And, of course, like the Queen and the Pope, these guys are hiding out. They're doing everything possible to avoid being served. And it's interesting that's going on because you'd think, as people often say to me, well, what power do you have? They're the government, they're the church. The reality is they don't have a lot of power left. It's dissipating as we speak. They know they have lost any moral legitimacy and legal legitimacy. So it's interesting. We have a lot more power in these situations than I think most people realize.
What type of warrants are these? They're called citizens arrest warrants, is what I saw on the video that you posted me earlier.
What they are comes from a long common law tradition, and you can look it up in British law. It's called a right of claim or a necessity defense in U.S. courts. And what it says is basically that the law has to protect people, and when it doesn't, citizens have the obligation, not just the right, but the obligation to defend their communities. And there's a long tradition of citizens arrest warrants. Anybody can do that. As a matter of fact, in Canada, the law was just liberalized so that if you don't even have to witness a crime, if you know of a crime and you know somebody who is involved in that crime, you have the right to detain them. If by not doing that, they would then go on and harm somebody. So that certainly applies to a lot of these people. We know that the child trafficking continues, that the courts and these police are involved actively protecting perpetrators. And so it's got a lawful and historical basis. And the important thing is how people make it real by putting into practice. And we're seeing that happen all over. I mean, we now have people in 16 countries that are enforcing this or trying to enforce it.
The warrant that got served on the inspector, because nothing's come of that yet, was it? That was served on the 8th?
On Friday, yeah.
Yeah.
Joshua Lemons, one of the people who work with our court, he went to the RCMP headquarters in British Columbia. It's called E Division. And it's on film if you look at the ITCCS.org posting. He read it to them. He presented it to another RCMP officer. And he's being legally served. I mean, under the law, you don't have to even hand it to the person directly as long as there's a record of it being served at the premises, which has happened. This Peter Montigue is really quite notorious. He was involved in the RCMP cover-up campaign, destroying evidence at residential school sites, silencing eyewitnesses, and starting a real smear campaign against all the work we were doing over the years. So he's definitely a legitimate target, so to speak.
But was I right in saying that some of these people that have been named have already been sentenced?
They've all been sentenced. Under the verdict of February 25th, all of the defendants were found guilty of crimes against humanity and criminal conspiracy to cover up those crimes. And that included Elizabeth Windsor, Joseph Ratzinger, the Pope, the Prime Minister of Canada, Stephen Harper, and the heads of these churches. So, I mean, it's a fait accompli. It's just a matter now of enforcement.
Who actually made this decision?
33 citizen jurors out of a group of 58 originally who volunteered. These were people in 5 countries, including about a third of them are actually from England. just ordinary men and women. You can hear, we did an interview with two of these citizen jurors on our blog radio program, We the Jury, which you can find, there's a link to it at our February 28th posting at ITCCS.org. But one of these people were a mother and housewife from Texas, Lisa Shannon, and then Melanie Spencer from Netherlands. She's an activist, community activist.
Mel V.
Yeah, Mel V, yeah. She was one of them. And they were just on the show describing why they did what they did and how it was completely open and above board.
Because this is one thing that I'm trying to get. Let's take just one of them, for example, Elizabeth Windsor. And we had somebody on the show last week talking about treason. And they wanted to serve certain legal documents, well, they have done, regarding the whole of Parliament committing treason against the Crown. But I'm trying to work out how you're finding them guilty and how that would have any weight upon them, because it seems to me that the royalty are well above the law.
Well, under their own rules, they are. It's kind of like, the mafia have their own, rules within their organization, and everybody has to follow it or you're dead. It's any government works that way. They have a way where they can commit crimes and get away with it. Under their rule and the law of England, as constituted now, the Queen as a person cannot be prosecuted for a crime. However, under Canadian law, the Crown can be held responsible for what's called tort offences. So if somebody connected to the Crown throws a rock through somebody's window or beats somebody up, they can still be held liable. Well, in Canadian law, the Crown has already been found guilty of ordering this regime that caused the death of over 50,000 children. The Queen herself was named by eyewitnesses as having abducted 10 children from a residential school in Kamloops in 1964. And there was an eyewitness to that, and there was other corroboration, which we're publishing. So as a human being, Elizabeth Windsor can very much be put on trial for these things, regardless of her so-called immunity. That immunity doesn't have international standing. Under international law, like with the Pope, they are just citizens. It's only under the laws of England that she's protected. So it's kind of like what you had in Nuremberg. The German defendants, the Nazis, were all saying, "No, you can't try us." And they said, well, we can under this higher international moral principle. We're just invoking the same principle.
Because, if you're attacking the Crown or the state, couldn't that be seen as treason to the Crown?
Well, it depends on your point of view, because they, in fact, are being treasonous towards the people of England. We are not doing civil disobedience here. We're enforcing the law, which says that all people, including monarchs and popes, are subject to justice. And when they're involved in criminal acts, from your own history, Charles I entered into a compact to try to destroy the rights of the people of England and league with the Vatican. He had his head chopped off for it, and that was a lawful act. It might not be legal under the laws of the king, but it was lawful in the will of the people, and that's the distinction you have to make.
Oh, okay. So let's move back on to that old inspector, the one that's had the things served on him. Can you tell us a little bit more about him?
Well, he's quite a nasty character, actually. To give you an example, there was in 1995, a group of native spiritual elders occupied a piece of land near Gustafson Lake. It's in central British Columbia. The local farmer got his friends in the RCMP to come up and try to evict them from their land. And this is traditional. It was land belonging to a ancient tribe that lived there, and it was their sacred ground traditionally. So they told the farmer they weren't going to move. This Peter Montigue mobilized the Royal Canadian Mounted Police military wing to invade and attack these people. They fired over 78,000 rounds of ammunition at them. They were trying to kill these elders. And Montigue, after, was also involved in the attempt to destroy Native organizations trying to bring out the truth about the residential school crimes. There's a famous quote from him. He says, "My specialty is smear campaigns."
Yeah, that's what I wanted to get onto, that bit, actually, specifically.
He's a black operative, and he approached two Native people who were in our group when we held our first tribunal into these residential school crimes in 1998. He paid them. He got them to come out publicly and make it look like I was taking advantage of natives, using their statement without their approval. I mean, you can see some of these smears on the internet still. And one of these people talked about it. And Montigue said, you discredit Kevin Annett, you discredit the issue. And that's kind of their whole strategy. You target people for discrediting. And he's a specialist in that. So, he's one of the people for that reason who was named as committing the crime of a conspiracy to cover up these clear acts of genocide.
Well, what does he do in his attempts of smearing?
Well, he approaches Native people and pays them money to say that Kevin Annett doesn't have any support among the Indians. He goes further, of course, and there's mass graves of children at residential school sites. According to a number of people I've spoken to, he coordinated the effort to dig up and destroy that evidence. And after 1995, when the first media reports came out about children dying and being buried in residential schools, so he's been involved in all that destruction of evidence, which of course is a crime under the law.
So if we moved on, what's the next steps for the ITCCS?
Well, it's really a matter of carrying on what we're doing, which is mobilizing people at the grassroots. We have 21 groups now that are acting on the citizens arrest warrant. But it's more than just performing arrests on individuals. It's about a whole reclaiming process. We are in the process of saying, well, these church properties, the places where these children are buried, that's all got to be reclaimed so that the full truth of these crimes can be not only exposed, but so that the continuing crimes like the child trafficking in that can be stopped. So it's kind of a taking this to other levels too and trying to mobilize people in these actions. We've had a lot of response, and we had in the first couple of days of this 300,000 hits on our site from people all over the world. So, we're really quite encouraged by that. And it's really a matter of everybody listening, taking the information and acting on it. There's 3 groups in England right now. There's one around Kent, in the London area, and in the Midlands around Coventry. They're all planning church action, holding their own tribunals, their own investigations into issues in England. The further continued seizure of children by...
So these ones in England, where are they holding their tribunals?
Well, that's an idea that they're still talking about. Like I say, the kind of 3 clusters of support we have is in Kent, London, and around Coventry. There's people around Liverpool and Manchester where I often go when I come to England to speak who want to do this too. So we can send you all that information.
Yeah, because the thing is, that's one of the fields that I'm quite well known in, is the searching into the legal aspects of it all, and that's why this case fascinates me. Like who would, like, once the warrant, now it's been served, who could fulfill that warrant and actually go out and make the arrest?
Any citizen. A citizen arrest warrant can be enforced at any time by anyone who's a citizen of that country.
So what do you think would happen if somebody tried to arrest the Queen?
Well, I mean, there's stages you can go through, and we actually are working on a little kind of protocol manual of ways to go about this. It's not so much you going as an individual and trying to grab her. There's first thing you can do is you approach the local police and say, here's the evidence, here's the lawful verdict. We need your assistance to fulfill your oath of office. This person's is a danger to the community. There's also a lot of embarrassment that can be brought to bear. We have a lot of media coverage of what we're doing. We go in and try to enforce the citizen arrest warrant. You'll get opposition, but then think of the impact on them. They are delegitimating themselves and looking ridiculous every time that happens. And there's also political pressure that can be brought to bear. We found in other situations that as soon as this stuff is ever talked about in the so-called mainstream, they react disproportionately because they know how guilty they are. They know. I mean, when we found out this testimony from a man who saw Elizabeth Windsor take 10 children away and they were never seen again, we wrote to Buckingham Palace about that. And not only didn't they respond, but even when we took this court case out on the internet, we gave them 3 opportunities to say whether this is true or not, to present their own counter evidence. They never did. Now, under the law, that's an admission of guilt. Why wouldn't you defend your reputation in public? And so all of this begins to work against them. And over the long run, it has a real impact. It's like a wave building. So I think it's important to see this in the whole context and not just the one act of trying to arrest this person. It's going to be the result of a lot of other.
Yeah, I see that. Like with the inspector, for instance, you've gone into the court. Was it no? What building was it that gentleman went into with the documents?
It's the RCMP headquarters in British Columbia. It's called E Division in Surrey, British Columbia. It's a suburb of Vancouver.
Okay, and so the process now that's been served, what would be the next step?
Well, he's a wanted criminal. He's a fugitive from justice. So anyone who spots him can with that warrant detain him and ask the police to either come and get him or these other options that we're going to suggest in people in this send out. So there's more details. I'll be sure to send you a copy of that this week when we have it finished.
That's where I get a little bit stuck. It's what's going to happen from there if it is another RCMP officer or constable that has to come along and arrest them and take them to the station. Then it will be that whole procedure that is set up by the Crown anyway, is it not?
Well, exactly. So you can work within their system, but we can deputize people as common law peace officers. We can say to the police, "No, you're under the authority now of the people, not the Crown." It's a bit of a shift of allegiance, and you'd be surprised how many police are on board with this, but they're a bit uncertain. I mean, if you can't detain the guy, you put up posters all around his neighborhood. This is a banned person, a wanted fugitive from the law. Avoid him at all costs. Keep him away from children, etc. There's incredible psychological pressure you can bring to bear on these people. It doesn't require an immediate arrest to have that effect. I mean, look at how the Queen and the Pope are hiding out in their palaces. I mean, that's being under arrest. They're detaining themselves out of their own fear, and that's some of the effect we're trying to create, right?
So you're not suggesting to people to actually go out there and try and arrest these people?
I think it depends on your balance of forces. If you have enough people, if you have coverage, and you can create a splash, try it. Absolutely try it. And who knows? Amazing things happen in this work. Breakthroughs, and so I would think, don't close off any avenue.
So you've got to look at the perspective of it, and this is what I was trying to say last time, is that they've got the military.
Well, do they?
Well, truly, at the end of the day, they've all sworn an allegiance to the Crown.
If they want to bring up the army and try to stop us, they're the ones who are going to lose face. I mean, no ruler rules through force alone. As soon as they start doing that, they lose a lot of legitimacy. And it's like these churches. When we started occupying them, the government of Canada, within a few weeks, began talking about issuing an apology for the residential schools. They hadn't done that before because we were getting them where it hurt. We went into the churches. You got to know where they're vulnerable, and their public image is very vulnerable.
What's that about occupying churches?
Pardon me?
What's happening with occupying churches?
Well, it's happening. Here and there, people are trying it. We're trying during Easter week, March 24th to 31st. We're going to encourage people to do it then as well. These are peaceful actions. We go in there, we talk to the parishioners, we reclaim the space. We say, these buildings should be used for the community. They're supported by taxpayers' money. The homeless should be allowed to sleep in here every night. That's the kind of creative way of taking back these places,
There's a question coming from the chat room. Is Kevin ever coming to the UK?
That's my plan. My plan is to come in June. And, working with a number of groups there.
And are you going to do any action when you come over here in June?
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons I'm coming.
And is that to do with serving arrest warrants and things like that? Is there anything that you can tell us now, basically? Oh,
all of the above. I'm going to go and try to have a meeting with the Archbishop of Canterbury. I'm going to go seek an audience with the Queen and ask her directly why she hasn't, what information she has on these 10 missing children. I mean, a lot of this is theater. It's like when you go to court, this is how you win hearts and minds, by being and saying, we're not doing anything wrong here. We're describing crimes committed by those in power. Naturally, they're going to discredit us. Naturally, they're going to, shake the saber at us. But what does their power ultimately rest on? It's They claim all the time to have divine sanction for what they're doing, queens and popes. Well, is God really on the side of people who abduct in order to cover up of child abuse? I don't think so.
Now, if we went back to the thing about the military, now I do understand that the military is quite high rung on the ladder to bring in case of certain people's action. But to get to that ladder, there's many rungs, and this is where I can't see how you could get the Pope actually on trial for these heinous crimes that they have been committing, and I cannot deny that, and what is going on in the world. So I just wonder, is there any way of, yes, it's honourable trying to get these evil people done, but to actually carry it out, is it ever going to happen? And if so, what is the actual process? Because it's not going to happen within their system, is it?
It's already happened. He stepped down. He stepped down very soon after he heard that there was an arrest warrant coming for him. We're having an impact. This has never happened in history before. The other papal resignations happened during times of war. He resigned in peacetime just before Easter. That's unprecedented, and it was a result of the work we're doing and other people. The International Criminal Court has an application now through the Center of Constitutional Rights in New York to arrest Joseph Ratzinger as a German citizen. The minute he steps outside there, they're going to seek an extradition order for her. So it's happening as we speak. It's so that you've got to keep that in mind. It's not the formidable image they create all the time. They don't have the power that they claim. And for if you had told me a few months ago the Pope was going to resign before Easter, I wouldn't believe it.
But I can totally agree with you. They don't have any power unless if you give them that power, and that's how the whole system has been built. But where do somebody that wants to get them done for their heinous crimes, where are we going to claim to get our authority from?
Well, authority is derived. It's a question of where you think authority comes from. Common law and natural law says it comes innately from within all of us. We cannot be governed except with our conscious, uncoerced consent. The whole system works on coercion and ignorance. So it's fraudulent, and anything under the law that's done fraudulently to us doesn't have any standing, including orders of the crown or the Pope or anybody. So once you stand on that different foundation, that authority does come from the people. I mean, that's when revolutions happen. It happened in America, it happened in Ireland, it happened in India against the British crown. I mean, that's what we're involved in. We're talking very clearly about returning power into the hands of people.
But also, another thing that I know I've heard you mention before, the OPPT.
Right.
What is it? The One People's Public Trust.
Yeah.
Yeah, the opt-in, as it's called. Do you want to explain a little bit more about what that is and what they're doing?
I wish I knew more. They've sent me their information. I'm beginning to read it. I've got other people who work with us trying to sort through it. It's kind of complicated to understand at first.
Well, there's a lot going on in the world. This is the whole thing on the activist sort of circuits, the way I've seen it. And I've been quite active myself, watching stuff go to and fro, and things are going tenfold at the moment. And if I could give any prediction, for sure, protests, Occupy movement, you're going to see bigger things than that, not too far around the corner. All the signs are there. It's going to kick off, and I wonder whether the New World Order or the powers that be, the elites or whatever you want to call them, all these think tanks and these departments and the banks and the media and the education and the healthcare system is all such a tight web that are they controlling even most of the truth movement?
I think there's a lot of controlled opposition that go... Sorry about that, my mic came unplugged. There's a lot of controlled opposition going on. I think there's you see that in the Occupy movement and other groups. But the thing to understand, they may try to control it at a certain level, but the more people you bring in, the less easy it is to control. You got to be wary of any group that comes along and says, I've got this ready-made solution, but it requires you giving me your consent and a lot of centralization. I think we're trying to get away from that. So you got to monitor things. You got to be very aware. Ask basic questions of any group. who set you up? Where does your money come from? Who's making the decisions, right?
So, who set you up? Where does your money come from? And who makes your decisions?
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I'm asking you.
Oh, me? Oh.
Yeah.
So generally. Who set us up? Well, it's been different stages. I started this work over 20 years ago. I worked with a number of groups starting in Canada. 4 years ago, we set up the ITCCS, the tribunal, at a meeting in Dublin, where I was meeting with a couple of groups that we work with in Ireland. Since then, we've had groups, as I say, you can see all of the history of it at itccs.org. If you look at the top, there's kind of banner headlines with the history and where we came from and everything. The money, it's all contribution, what people donate to us, basically to pay for my travel, because I don't get funding from anywhere. And but again, this is something much bigger. There's a group in France that set up an ITCCX section and to do their own work around child abuse going on now today. What's the third one? I'm trying to remember. Who makes the decisions? In the ITCCS, it's collaboratively done. I mean, I'm kind of a public face for a lot of this stuff. I do a lot of the field work, but there's more people coming on board all the time, and it's a coalition. So there isn't one executive body that runs everything. People in different countries are left to, prioritize what they want to work on, decide things for themselves. There's a lot of discussion that goes on, but it's relatively decentralized.
So since you've been doing this, and you were saying about that inspector was attacking you with smear campaigns and things like that, and I know within what I do, I've had everything from being strangled, being arrested, been insulted to the highest level, been stalked for constantly every day over a year and a half. Half the time I wonder why this does go on. And I sit there and I do question what I do and if I am making an impact or making any change in the world. Some people say, no, you'll never make any change. But I do believe that it's we that make the change within ourselves. But the thing is, what's actually happened to you, attack-wise? Have you been had really serious interactions? They call them internet trolls, don't they?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's kind of a long history here. At first, the more public exposure you get, the safer you are generally. It's been everything from physical attacks to the usual smear and misinformation campaign. They tend to target the people around me rather than me directly because I've got too much light on me, and support that way. But what's interesting is they've never come at me legally. They've never taken me to court, which is really funny because if they had any counter evidence or anything, that'd be the first thing they do. They just don't want this in the public record anyway. They just want to delegitimate an attack from the shadows.
So one of the first things that you said was the right to claim.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about what a right to claim is?
Well, right of claim. Again, I've had some legal training, but I don't have a degree or anything, and it's in the Canadian context. The right of claim is a reference to something found in British law, where you have a claim as a citizen against the authorities based on a harm that's been done to you. And if the authorities don't respond, you then have the right to sue them. That's an old tradition. As a matter of fact, the original idea came out of Magna Carta, where the king's power was not absolute. So you'd have to kind of look that up in your context, how that's played out in cases in British law.
I don't get the Magna Carta myself. There's a lot of people that look into that sort of stuff, but I don't see what a contract that was signed, how many years ago, nearly 800 years ago, by somebody who claims to have some kind of authority by wearing a crown, and he signed it under duress anyway. I don't know what that sort of would have over me. In fact, I don't know what any of their rules would have over me. I inherently know what's right and wrong. I don't need to call that a law. Pardon?
It's not over you. It was a principle that entered into law, which said that the power of the monarch is not absolute. That's all. And that principle was then taken on and applied in other cases. But you're right, absolutely. The authority comes from you. You never have to give it up. And if you do it under duress, they're committing a crime.
And that's the thing with the Constitution. That's another thing that was signed by body of Freemasons hundreds of years ago. And what's it for? It's just another body of rules that people think gives them rights and freedoms, and it doesn't at all. It's something that's created by the government to control people, surely.
I would say so, yeah, because it comes from the notion of law that they are defining your rights for you. It's like the Charter of Rights in Canada is the same way. They say Canadians have these 4 fundamental freedoms, but they're acts of parliament, so they can be revoked at any time. That's a different idea than what you get in the original American Constitution, which says Congress shall enact no law to subvert these fundamental inalienable rights. In other words, you're born with them and no government can take them away from you.
That's the whole thing. In my own previous court experiences, anything that you claim in a courtroom, you're liable for. That's why I try not to claim anything. And I think if you're trying to take them to court, and I can't see any way around this, you're taking them to their courts, because and the prison sentence of 25 years, where are you going to hold them?
Well, we're not using their courts. That's why we set up the International Common Law Court. You can hold them in any public facility. You can set up a road. This is what we're talking about. There's models in history of how to do that. If you're breaking free from an empire, you don't use their system. You set up a system alongside it. The Irish did it. They had the Dáil Éireann, the Irish Parliament, existing right under the nose of the British. They had their own prisons. They had their own courts. We can do that. It's just a matter of we have the vision and the will to do it, and enough people to make it happen.
Okay. If we move on to the Pope and the Vatican, there's been some stuff in the news lately about putting a new Pope in. So what's going on there then?
Well, that's really unclear because, like with the Vatican Bank, it's a secret society. You can't really know. But there is a lot of discontent. The American cardinals, they're meeting right now in what's called the Conclave to elect the new guy. And the American bishops and cardinals got together, and they were about to issue a public statement about 2 days ago, and they were silenced by the Vatican. And then there was a media ban put on all the members of the conclave. So in other words, the Americans were going to say something mildly critical, probably, or because they said their own archbishops are on trial in America now. And they and the Irish bishops have all talked they're floating the idea of becoming more autonomous from Rome, which is really significant because it means the Vatican system is breaking up, just like you had during the Reformation. And I think that's what's happening. The old guard is probably going to put one of their people back in, maybe Bertone, the Secretary of State, or somebody who's his friend. But they're keeping things tightly under control now. And I'd be surprised if you get the real story out of any of the corporate media.
Yeah, that's probably the truth. And another thing I'd like to touch on is the Canon law that Ratzinger passed. Can you tell us again, like what that's actually about? Like, if I remember rightly, it was something to do with covering up paedophilia.
Yeah, there's a law, Canon law. You can look it up right at the back of our book, hiddennolonger.com. You go to appendix number 9, and all of that law, Crimen Solicitanis, is reprinted. It was a law that Ratzinger himself helped to compose back in 1962. It was adopted as church law then. And it basically says, if you go to paragraph 11, that any time a child is harmed, the pontifical secret is to be imposed. That means the child who's being raped by the priest is to be silenced, and the police are not to be told. And if it's disclosed, the priest and the bishop are excommunicated. It's that simple. So it's a order to commit a criminal conspiracy to obstruct the laws of another country. Now, that's a really serious crime. The Pope is telling people, that law, not just one Pope, but the law, the Catholic Church everywhere is telling its members all over the world to subvert the laws of that country in order to protect child rapists. So it's a really serious offense, and it's right there on the books.
Okay. And one thing that just keeps getting me is, how does any of these orders carry any weight? I just don't get that at all.
Well, they carry weight by their existence and how they're enforced. They carry a lot of moral weight, or they wouldn't be reacting the way they do right now. You see, power is all about image, and once that image goes, it can't be restored, and they know that, so they have to act arrogantly, like, oh, these people don't matter. They ignore their own laws. I mean, Right now in Canada, the government is claiming that only 3,000 children died in residential schools when they own records admit that it was much more than that. They feel that they have the power to lie and be believed, the big lie. They know that the minute the lie is exposed, they lose all credibility. Well, that's what we're doing. We're saying by their own laws, they're guilty. And eventually, in enough pressure, and this always happens, police, insiders, people in the courts are going to start agreeing with us. It happened in Canada. For years, I was arguing in the wilderness with this information. Finally, a few of us occupy churches, and the government's forced to apologize and admit that children died. I mean, that's results. And the same thing is going to happen with what we're doing now. It'll take longer because they're bigger institutions, but they always fall. Truth has a power unto itself. And I really have to believe in that.
Has the Canadian government actually admitted that they're guilty of genocide and sexual crimes?
I'll use that language, but they admit in the apology, they admitted children died. They have subsequently shown that it was a result of the actions of laws that they themselves enacted. So, of course, it's a tacit admission of guilt right down the line. But they're in charge here legally, so they're free to ignore it. It's kind of like, what would the Nazis have said about, if they had won World War II, what would they be saying about the Jews, okay, or anybody else they killed?
They do admit to that.
They also admit to cultural genocide, yes, which is their modified term for it. They say, yeah, we did try to wipe out the languages and everything of these people. Well, that's still genocide under international law. So, yeah, they have admitted.
What do you mean they tried to wipe out the languages?
So law said that you weren't allowed to speak your Indian language or practice your customs or you go to jail. There was laws on the books in Canada right up to the 1960s about that. So these things are all laws. It's all being proven. And that's so we have a solid foundation to try them because their courts are protecting them for any consequence for what they've admitted are crimes.
Do you know what? That actually sort of goes on over here. You don't get arrested for it, but I've known of people in schools in Wales, if they're not talking Welsh, or some schools, if you are talking Welsh, and it's like really strange this is going on. And that's like a manipulation of the language and programming. And also another thing, this is just something random, nothing to do with the subject, but when you're writing at school, that I know this for a fact, if you go to school and you start writing with your left hand, they will try and program you literally to write with your right hand because that's the way it should be done. And I think there's something really odd in that, because if people naturally want to write with their left hand, and you see it less and less now, I bet you if you look up the statistics of left-handed people on population, I reckon it would be, it's just a rough guess, but I reckon it would be less today than what it was about 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Yeah, well, what you mentioned about Wales and in Scotland, the English state had a policy for many years to do exactly what they did to Indians over here, which is set up schools where the Welsh or the indigenous languages there would be wiped out. Now, that's genocide under international law, and governments admit they do that, but the reality is that in practice, genocide isn't a crime because everybody does it. And so, they absolve themselves. They say, we have the right to kill our own citizens, to do whatever we want. Now, that's not legitimate. If people go along with that, then they're going to suffer under it. But at some point, you've got to draw a line and say, no, these governments are criminal bodies. They've committed crimes. They've got to be held accountable. And that's all we're trying to do and are doing.
So where does this all end?
Well, I don't think it does end. You have to do what you can. You got to transform it so it happens. It doesn't happen again. And the way you do that is you return power to the people who can make sure that tyrants don't run things. And this is why we're talking about a much bigger change than just a court case. We got to restructure society. We got to make churches publicly controlled institutions where they're not a law unto themselves. All of this has much bigger repercussions.
Hopefully he's still going to be in the call. He must have just picked up his phone there.
It's the phone there.
That's all right, Kevin. Where was you at?
No, I'm just saying that this can be seen as just one campaign this can't be just one campaign. It's part of a bigger movement to transform society. And it's going to take a long time, but the quickness with which things are happening now is really startling. So I think it might take even shorter than people realize.
Well, I really do wish you good luck with all this, but I find it hard to see these criminal elites brought to true justice, and that's why my own personal solution is I recognise all this corruption, but I just try and use that system as less as possible, as much as I possibly can, and I don't know, fighting it just seems to give it energy and power. Like when you look at these big movements, they're only infiltrated or orchestrated by the powers that be anyway. So they're controlling this from a very high level.
That's why we're not fighting. We're not using their system. We're creating alternative systems. People have to leave, like exactly what you're saying. We're agreeing with you. We're saying they have to leave the existing system and start building these alternatives for people. And that's what we're trying to do.
So tell us what you think the alternative sort of lifestyle would be, because you've got to look at quite a few aspects of things. You've got education, you've got health, you've got money. These are all controlled by the ones that are manipulating everything. What would you do if this was in your hands?
Well, I mean, I don't want to be the blueprint. I'm not the trying to set myself up like I've got the answers for everything. It's really a matter of what people create, but certain principles have to guide people, and that is, decorporatize society, put power back into the hands of local communities, have a way to, especially get out of debt slavery, destroy what's disestablished the existing financial system, create local economies of exchange where people aren't dependent on the money or the market system. Make local community courts and governing bodies the means by which people rule. I think the nation state and international corporate systems are redundant. We have to go back to that kind of local land-based economy. So, I mean, all of that people are working on, and I think we have to help these seeds that are being nurtured all over the planet for that.
Now, if I was not economically sound and looking at the monetary system, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head here, but if you did actually create an infinite amount of money but didn't have any interest tied to it, and the people controlled that, you know what I mean? It's what would be wrong with that? How would that not work? That's very simple, surely. Erode the whole of the world's debt. But then again, this is one thing. It's like, I'm talking like one world government there. You've got the money supply controlled by the people, perceivedly, worldwide, and there wouldn't be no debt. What would happen then? Would there be anarchy, though?
I'm not sure what you mean. Like, I think the whole move is to get away from money systems and banks and all of that. And people have done that historically. We lived without that for a long time in our history. So, there was a thing here in Vancouver Island set up local exchange and trading network where people just issued their own local currency based on real things, on labor and services that we're able to deliver to one another, not on the bogus, fraudulent, financial banking system we have now, which just creates money up in air in that. I mean, that's all ridiculous. We need economies of scale and that are based on real things, and that's what people are trying to create. So we're not talking about money at all.
And I totally go with you on that as well. I think people should get away from the monetary system. And when they try and localise it, that's even manipulated and controlled by the government. You've got things like the Brixton pound and transition sort of towns banknotes, and Torquay have got their own money, I think. And there's other different areas in Britain. But you've got to buy these with regular currency. It's like, don't you get it? You know what I mean? This is still within that system. So I just want to see people free from that whole system of control. But if you told people like you could live without money and everything, you could have an abundance of everything, because the commercial world throws away a silly percentage of food, for example, and this could be given away freely if it was a free world. But it's waiting for that system to let go of their power. And whilst they're getting their power from the people that use it, and the amount of people that do use it is about 99.999% of the population. So how could you step away from it?
Well, no, in fact, a lot of people don't use it. A lot of the people I work with, say in Vancouver, they're very poor. They're not tied into the system at all. And it's a question of what you create as an alternative. I mean, the reality is that the system is collapsing. It's not a matter of a few people on top deciding to change it. It's not functioning anymore. And it's beginning to come apart. So the question then is, what are you going to do when it does come apart? Right? You got to have some way of surviving this. And that's why people are forced into local solutions, because it's the only thing they have control over.
Are you a religious man yourself?
No, not really. I like to think of myself as spiritual, but I've never believed in organized religion.
Because that's one thing I see with money is people perceive it to be the biggest faith on the planet. And I wonder where their faith in humanity or humankind has gone. I don't like the word human, but people know what I'm talking about. Where's our faith gone in each other?
Well, exactly. That's what we have to recover. And when people don't have that simple human ability as men and women to support each other and work together, I mean, that's what causes a lot of the problems. So, yeah, recovering that is a really important thing. And it's actually harder to do a lot of the time than talking about the bigger issues. You know, the small things are often the hardest.
Okay, so we've only got about 8 minutes left. Would you like to tell us anything else that's been happening within all of this at the moment?
Well, like I say, it's just really growing by leaps and bounds. Over the next little while, I mentioned those events in March that are happening. There's these networks that are developing in England. When I come in June, we'll be doing a number of public actions, conferences. If you just stay posted at ITCCS.org, you'll see a lot of this stuff. We're also getting picked up by public television in America now. There's more on that on the website, but it's important for people to understand that all the evidence is out there. You just have to take the time to go through it and see everything we've been talking about today is verified by fairly hard evidence. So that's ITCCS.org and hiddennolonger.com. And if people want to get a hold of me, I'm at hiddenfromhistory1, like the number 1, hiddenfromhistory1@gmail.com.
So who's your main target? Who would be the number one honcho you would want to get a hold of and arrested?
Well, I don't know. There's, as you see, we've mentioned 30 of them in this first case. I don't think there's a number one person who's responsible, but there are figureheads that are important to take down. And we're already doing that. The Pope, the Queen, the Crown of England, the Prime Minister of Canada, those are the ones in the first case. But, the reality is that the real string pullers you never see. They're behind the scenes. And the more we expose them and the real forces behind these crimes, the better.
Well, I'd like to remind people as well, what we're going to do after the hour. We've got because we've only got Kevin for an hour tonight. So we're going to have a call in and people can either contact myself, if they're already on my list. We've got a couple of callers lined up. Or you can contact Bob's Backyard at Skype. Or there's a few phone numbers which have been leaked about on the website, and it's also coming up in the chat room. So if anybody does want to call in after the hour, then we're going to play a couple of tunes, basically get down to another hour of getting the call set up and getting everyone chatting away. And then we'll have the Dark City crew after 9 o'clock. The numbers have come up. It will be 0044 161 298 0298. And I'm not too sure if that's from in the country or out the country, because it's got... So it must be, that's 0044, and that's if you're outside the country. And if you're not, it'll be 0161 298 0298. So, Kevin, 2 minutes left before we go to a tune. And is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, just that, I don't mean to say by anything we're doing that we have the answer to a lot of this stuff. We're trying new things. This is a work in progress, and it really depends on everybody getting involved, bringing your own ideas and solutions. That's, the nature of a creative growing thing. So Don't look to me for all the answers. Look to us for evidence and information and our example, but then take the ball and run with it yourself. Try these things out, and it's all about winning freedom and life again. So I mean, I just encourage people to do that. So anyway, thanks again for having me on. I appreciate.
And I suppose you must be really, really busy with doing all of this. This must take your time up, because I do radio 2 nights a week, and it's it does me in, the amount of work I've got to do just to put them 2 nights in.
Absolutely, especially in a volunteer organization, there aren't a lot of people because they're all so caught up in their own jobs, and that it's a big burden, but it pays off in a lot of ways, and I'm really thankful for the job actually.
Okay, so we'll say good night and goodbye to Kevin, and after the hour we're going to have call-ins, so definitely stay tuned. It's going to be another cracking hour. Bye, Kevin.
Thanks so much.
Things, yes, lots and lots of different things. There's chat, there's music, diversity, an occasional argument, for the warmongers. We need to have a little bit of war and argument for those people who just... Things, yes, lots and lots of different things. There's chat, there's music. Things, yes, lots and lots of different things. There's chat, there's music, diversity, an occasional argument, for the warmongers. We need to have a little bit of war and argument for those people who just live in the fucking fear factory.
G'day guys, this is Matt from Australia. We've had a bit of a shit of a time here lately with the weather, but I get a lot of enjoyment out of listening to Dark City Radio.
Shite. It's all fucking shite, I tell you. There's lots of it everywhere. You wake up every fucking morning. Before you know it, you're in there shite. You've got to do everything you can possibly imagine to avoid it. Shite, shite, and then when you've got through all that, guess what you get then? Television. Fucking television. My God, if there's not enough shite to go around in the real world, they deliver it to you in great droves, programmed into your own home every night. For God's sake, boys and girls, wean yourself off your shite. Fill your hearts with anything but that ridiculous droning crap. Who gives a flying fuck if somebody married somebody else in the pub down the street where the guy was run over by the woman who'd left the guy she'd married the fucking episode before? Shite!
Welcome back, guys. This is the call-in hour, and the first guest we've got coming on is Lawrence McCurry. He's well known in Canada, but I don't think he's Kevin's biggest fan. Welcome to the show, Lawrence.
Hi, Dom. Glad to be here. Greetings from Toronto, Canada.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I was talking to you earlier on today, and I've known of your work from the Occupy movement, and we're both in quite an active, or it used to be quite an active group. It still is. I watch it every now and again. Occupy is an inside job. And we've both witnessed each other's work and followed it and had a look and delved in and out. So when I posted today and I saw that you commented saying what you said, it was like, right, okay, let's have a look at this. And then you added me on Skype and we had a little chat. So what do you think of this Kevin ANNETT?
Well, it's funny you should bring up the Occupy movement, because the Occupy movement in Canada heavily promoted Kevin ANNETT. As a matter of fact, he made a pilgrimage to all the Occupy camps across the country, waving these, he'd get up in front of the cameras and he'd pull these bones out of his pocket and wave them around saying, "These are the bones of dead children." Well, right off the bat, a lot of people were blown away by the fact that, these are supposed to be the dead children that he's got so much reverence for, that he's carrying around in his sweaty old pocket. Turns out he never had any children's bones. What he dug up from a site in Brantford were animal bones. The anthropologist that he had with him at the time even said, "Hey, those aren't even human." He claims to have sent them to the Smithsonian, of all places.
What's the Smithsonian?
The Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. Funny thing, though, a blogger by the name of Heather Martin contacted the Smithsonian, and they'd never heard of Kevin Annett. They have very stringent rules, especially for dealing with anthropology and human remains. Everything is logged and booked, and there's a chain of evidence. One of the things that these so-called bones that Kevin Annett dug up, there was never any chain of evidence. His dig was conducted in such an amateur fashion. Anybody who had anything to do with it quickly distanced themselves from him. The truth of the matter is Kevin Annett is nothing but a cheap con artist. He solicits funds that he has sent to his father's trailer park down in Florida, and uses this money to fly all over the world and collect even more money. Massive amounts of Native people in Canada have disavowed him. He's been kicked off every reservation he ever stepped foot on. There's a very good YouTube film out there with Chief Frank Miller, with a whole collection of different chiefs, that read a formal letter asking him to stop telling lies and stop saying that he represents the Native people, which he does not. He talks about these Native residential schools. This is a very painful thing for Natives in Canada. There is a history of these residential schools. Back around the turn of the century, the Canadian government took a lot of Native children off the reserve and put them in these residential schools where they, died of such things as diphtheria and typhus. But people were dying of diphtheria and typhus all over the place back in those days. The residential schools were no different, and the fact that all these children were put together in a school just made it a breeding ground for those kind of diseases. Kevin's got an axe to grind with the churches. He uses stupid people to grind that axe. He uses them for funding. He's not the first person to come up with these revelations about the Native residential schools in Canada. People knew about this. It's well documented. The government at some point even came out and apologized to any of the survivors that were still alive and compensated them financially for it.
So did genocide go on then, as such, as what he's saying?
Well, it all depends on what you want to call genocide, Dom. The history of the way that the government has treated the Native peoples in North America, not only Canada, but the United States, is totally deplorable. Were the Catholic Church wholesale murdering children? Of course not.
Questions coming from the chat room. What is Lawrence's connection to the church? I don't think he's got one, have you?
To the church?
Yeah.
No, I don't belong to any organized religion at all. I consider myself a Christian, but I don't belong to any of the fan clubs. I've certainly got no love for either the Catholic Church or the Anglican Church, which at one time Kevin Annett was the minister of. They defrocked him. They threw him out of the Anglican Church. They asked him to submit to a psychiatric examination, and he refused. So he's a defrocked Anglican minister. But no, I have no connection to the churches, nor am I being paid by any government agency. I am a writer and a an activist in Toronto, and I can tell you exactly, what brought me into this whole thing with Kevin Annett, if you want to hear the story.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
Okay, well, I first became aware of Kevin Annett some years ago when he had a radio station on a co-op radio out of Vancouver. He got fired from that radio station for coming in after hours one night with a hooker and doing crack on the premises, smoking crack with a hooker on the premises.
What? Say that again.
A couple of years ago, Kevin Annett had a radio show on a co-op radio station in Vancouver. I don't recall the call letters. I could look it up. I knew somebody else who had a show that came right after his. He got fired from that radio station because he brought in a hooker one night and was smoking crack on the premises. Now, his excuse was that he was out of town at the time. This is beautiful, this story. That he was out of town at the time and that the RCMP had hired a lookalike to go around and insult people and to go into this radio station. Some guy who looked just like Kevin Annett to do these evil things to besmirch his reputation. At the time I just thought, who cares?
So Kevin Annett has admitted that this act has happened, but it wasn't him as such. And
of course it was him. They got him on videotape. Now, they never made that videotape public, but as I said, I did know somebody who had another show at that radio station who does claim to have seen the film, and it was Kevin. Believe me,
Please tell me he wasn't in the church. He wasn't working in the church when this happened. This was after he's.
Oh no, yeah, this was afterwards. Like, take for example that so-called book he put out. There's a cover of what he claims to be a smallpox native victim on the cover of that book. If you look up smallpox in Wikipedia, you will find a picture of somebody from Bangladesh going back to 1963 or something. That's where he lifted that picture on. That's not even a native person. It's an East Indian kid.
If we went back to the crack and the whore.
Okay, well that happened out west. I wasn't directly involved in it. It was just the first time that I'd heard something about Kevin Annett. I was going
to say is where can people, because people in the chat room are asking to look up this information, where can people look that up if they wanted to Google that?
About what happened at Co-op Radio?
Yeah.
I really don't know if there are any links to that. I found out about it from a guy by the name of Kevin Kelso, who had a show called The Brown Bagger, which was a truth show that played at Mondays at noon on the same station. And that's how I learned about it. So I don't know if that ever did make the internet or not.
Yeah. So, at the end of the day, that's hearsay evidence, then, isn't it? It's like
absolutely it is. But I'll tell you where I first started investigating him was a year ago. He was promoting a guy by the name of
was it Jason Bowman?
Jason Bowman, thank you. Temporary mind block there. Guy by the name of Jason Bowman, who called a press conference in front of the courthouse in Toronto, saying that he just launched a lawsuit against the Queen, the Pope, the Canadian government, and listed Kevin Annett as a defendant. Now, of course, none of the mainstream media showed up for this, but the local alternative media did. And when we looked into these claims, we found out that it was all bullshit. Jason Bowman was a fraud. He hadn't launched any kind of court case whatsoever, and was totally lying. And when we called Jason Bowman on it, he never showed up the following day like he said he was going to. Kevin Annett, through Jason Bowman, basically, he put out notices for days that this court case was taking place. And then when we called that as a fraud, Kevin Annett threw Jason Bowman under the bus and disassociated himself with it. You'll notice a lot of the stuff that Kevin Annett publishes, he does through people like Alfred Lamont Weber, who in turn is a well-known internet shill. He sells Alfred Lamont Weber sells courses so that you could be a diplomat to aliens. Courses in exopolitics, if there is such a thing, so that you too can be a diplomat with the aliens. Bizarre shit. He's also associated with the Church of 666 and some guy who calls himself Jesus Christ. These are the shady kind of people that Kevin Annett uses to further his cause. Now, recently, he's been going to Europe and taking up the cause of the Magdalene laundries that happened over there in Ireland and England, I believe, only because people in Canada have tuned into the fact that he's nothing but a cheap con artist, and now he's looking to take his sideshow over to Europe. He claims that he held an exorcism in the Vatican and there was some sort of tornado. As soon as the Pope announced that he was stepping down, he releases these bogus court papers saying that it was because of the charges from his common law court, that the Pope is stepping down. And it was plastered all over the internet. Everywhere. And it's totally bogus. I mean, there are no court papers. There was no trial. There was no citizens court. The ITCCS is an organization of one person, Kevin Annett. Anybody out there in Brussels listening to me? Can you tell me where the ITCCS is? He also has these
What is the ITCCS?
He calls it the International Tribunal on Crimes of Church and State. But, the ITCCS is one person. It's Kevin Annett. He also uses this persona of Jeremiah Jourdain, who is supposed to be a 99-year-old shaman or Indian chief or member of the ITCCS. It's actually Kevin Annett again. The whole thing is a total fraud.
Well, I did see a little bit of an argument on something that was posted up, which you posted me earlier, between Mel Spencer, and we had her on the show a few weeks ago, and between her and Ryan Elson regarding that email, and she was saying that Kevin was using her email address or something like that.
Oh, certainly. He uses other people's names. He uses other people's email addresses, much like Jason Bowman does now. Jason Bowman is still up at the Indian Reserve up in Brantford. The common link that all these people have is they're all members of the International Socialists, the same people that brought us the Occupy movement. He's a fraud. For anything Kevin Annett claims, I could prove it's a lie. There was this one survivor whose story he used in his book, who actually sent him a letter saying, "Stop using my name, stop using my story. I never gave you permission, and you've lied and exaggerated to where none of it's even true anymore." Well, after that person died, Kevin Annett wrote a letter of praise from this person and copied their signature at the bottom of it, released it on the internet. Ryan Elson proved that the document was a forgery, that the two signatures matched so perfectly. As everybody knows, you never sign your name exactly the same way twice. And if you were to take these two signatures, you could match them up and see that it's a forgery. It's like the children's bones. There never were any children's bones. Those are animal bones.
What was this website which had all this information on it you posted me earlier? What's the name of that website? Because we've got other people saying, where can they look this up? And there was a website or two websites you sent me earlier which had loads and loads of links and information, which I don't have any time to look over, but I know people will after this call. So what's the name of the websites? And I've got to call other people in as well.
Okay, well, I mean, there's 2 or 3 good websites out there. One of the more prominent ones is from a writer by the name of Greg Renouf, and that's at www.genuity.com. That's GenuineWitty.com. Another one would be Heather Martin's website, which is called Stop Kevin Annett. And another one would be the Ryan Elson's website, which is dissembling.org. If you want, I'll drop that one for you right in chat here. And
yeah, if you drop it in the chat here, then they'll drop it in the chat room live for the viewers watching. And remember, if anyone's got any questions actually in the chat room, always feel free to throw them across. One of the main things that's come across, Lawrence, is that it's gone quite irate, to be honest, and they've gone, show us the proof.
Well, you know, it's hard to prove a negative, right? You know, you say, oh, this common law court that Kevin's talking about was imaginary. It never happened. Well, how do you prove that something never happened? You know, it's almost impossible. What I'd like to say is how about he shows us some proof that it did happen? Who was the judge? Who were the jury members? If they were real people, why not bring them forward to testify that they were at this so-called kangaroo court that Kevin Annett supposedly had? You know, it's funny. He claims to have the support of a country called the Eurostate, somewhere over there in Europe. I looked that up a couple of weeks ago. It turned out to be a ditch running between Holland and some other country, 100-yard ditch. There's no such country as Eurostate. It's a piece of no man's land on the Holland border.
Well, I think we've got Prajna on the show now.
Sure we have, and Carly. Right.
Hello, Carly.
Carly's been reading up on all this stuff. So
well, actually, it was a couple of weeks ago. It was after you'd first interviewed Kevin, Dom, and I started to see some various smears going around Facebook, and particularly from someone who'd previously been really supportive of Kevin. And so I thought I'd check it out. Pardon?
Who was that?
Nell someone, I can't remember what else she calls herself. But I thought I'd check it out and look into it because, you know, question everything, as we say. So I went on a little roam around, took a look around her page, and there was obviously a friend of hers who was trying to twist her head in a particular direction, and posted a link to a particular blog which contains a lot of the stuff that Lawrence is talking about now. Now, this woman had copy-pasted a conversation that she'd had with Mel V across onto the blog. And basically, this woman was saying to Mel V that Kev uses this alias identity. JJ is the initials. I can't remember what it stands for, but Lawrence has just mentioned the name anyway.
Jeremiah Johnson.
So again, Jeremiah Johnson, that's it, yeah. So the woman had copy-pasted this conversation in which she's saying to Mel V that Kev has this alias Jeremiah Johnson, and Mel is saying, well, please just show me proof, give me any kind of proof. And the whole conversation, I don't even know why she copied it over, because she provided no proof whatsoever. There was also the thing on there showing these the photocopy of Kev's signature, which can be photoshopped anywhere. I mean, it just wasn't any kind of proof of anything whatsoever. And since then, I saw a comment from Kevin himself regarding Jeremiah Johnson, and it was on Nell's profile. And basically, Kevin was saying, yeah, this guy exists, and he often does use the same computers as Ian. What's your problem? And that was that. So I have done some searching around because I'm that way inclined, and I've been looking for any kind of evidence that might suggest that Kev is somehow trying to bullshit everyone, and I've not seen any yet. This is the thing. I've heard exactly the things that Lawrence is saying, but I haven't seen anything tangible to back any of it up with. And what strikes me is that whenever anyone is actually doing anything,
starting to have an effect,
any kind of an effect, whether it's affecting people's consciousness or, just bringing information forward or whatever it is, whenever anyone starts to have any kind of effect, then the smear campaign starts.
Would you like to go on? I was just going to say at that point, carry on.
All right. I'll just quickly finish, because another thing I notice is that I've been aware of Kevin doing what he's doing for, I think, around 2 years now. He was on with Freeman Jack on TNS a couple of years ago, and he's been quietly working away in the background, pulling all his stuff together, getting the tribunal together, making documentaries and whatnot. And it is only in the past few weeks since suddenly Kevin Annett's profile has become known and public, if you like, practically worldwide. It's only since then that suddenly people are slinging the mud. And it just does beg the question, then, why have you not said anything about this for the last 2 years while Kevin's been beavering away in the background? And that's about it, really.
So would you like to reply to that, Lawrence?
Yeah, I'd love to address that. Kevin Annett uses a tactic that often gets used in the truth community, and that is show me the proof. Well, I'd like to say the same thing to Kevin, show me the proof. He claims that those bones are children's bones. Show me the proof. Show me the DNA. Show me a DNA test. He claims that the ITCCS in Belgium is a real organization. Well, show me an address. Show me the people who are supposedly in this organization. When you say that to him, he says, "Oh, we've got to protect their identities." And anybody who comes out and calls Kevin Annett on his bogus claims, he merely smears them with the brush of they're government agents, or whenever we start to make any headroom against the Pope and the Queen, these naysayers come out of the bush and smear me. I have people trying to kill me. I have people everywhere, trying to smear my good name. Well, that's because he's a liar. Okay, it's plain and simple. It's because he's a liar. People ask us for proof. Oh, prove Kevin Annett is lying. Prove that he's telling the truth. Like he comes out with this tribunal.
The person who makes the claims, Lawrence, the person who makes the claim, if you're making claims about Kevin Annett, then you're the guy who's got to come up with the proof. That's the way that it works in any adult society.
How do you prove a negative, right? Like, for example, this tribunal. Have you seen any paperwork on this? I've seen like 2 pages. And supposedly there's a scribble at the bottom of the page that's totally illegible that was supposed to have been the judge in this tribunal. Who was the judge? Produce them. Produce 2 of the jury members.
It was me.
Produce anybody who was actually there.
I was. Excuse me, Lawrence.
I
was the judge. There you go. It was me. I judged that any action against people that are committing these atrocities, and I don't think any of us are going to doubt that the church has committed these atrocities all over the world. And that the fact that the church is still covering up paedophilia within the canon law. So if he can bring that to the forefront, then what is he actually doing wrong again? What was it he was doing wrong? I'm a bit lost here, if you can, Lawrence. What is it the man's actually doing wrong if he is bringing this to the forefront?
Where's all the money going?
Who cares? What's that got to do with you? Are you jealous?
That he's collecting.
Oh, you're after a few bucks. Are you jealous, man? We'll have a look in the coffers for you if that's the case. So the guy's getting paid. That's his business, isn't it?
Well, isn't that what con artists do? Isn't that what con artists do?
Look, I'm not bothered. I'm not bothered of his methods or his motives.
They collect for charities that don't exist.
Look, I don't know what a con artist do. Okay, I don't know that. I'm not interested in that. I don't know the guy. You know, I'm pretty new to all this, and I'm taking what he's saying on pretty much face value. He is bringing to the public's attention that this kind of thing is and has gone on. Would you disagree?
A lot of his stories are exaggerating.
Yeah, maybe so. But would you agree?
For example, would I agree that he's telling the truth about most things? No, I wouldn't.
That's not the question I asked you. You're being diversive now. There's no need.
Okay,
you can't answer the question. That's all right.
Ask it again.
Do you think, that he should stop basically in bringing these atrocities which have took place and are still taking place and are still being supported under canon law? Do you think he should stop bringing that to the forefront?
What atrocities are still taking place?
Genocide.
What world are you living in, Lawrence? What world are you living in, man?
Those residential schools were closed down years and years ago, and they're not.
Look, it's still canon law that they cannot speak out against paedophilia. Do you agree or not? Let's cut it down. Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing? Because he's brought that to the forefront. That's one thing he's done. Okay, forget the rest.
Excuse me, it was the mainstream media that exposed all these priests as pedophiles.
So fine.
It was on the nightly news for years.
Okay, and he's carried on that. He's carried on that. You see, Lawrence, we set up this because we know how it...
No, you don't get it.
Who doesn't get it?
He's carried on. What has he done? Besides get up there
he came on our radio station and spoke...
Lawrence, he's exposed what was actually happening in those schools in Canada.
He didn't expose that.
He did to me, Lawrence. Lawrence, excuse me, Lawrence. Come on. Lawrence, look, you've had a good 20 minutes now talking with Don. Okay, all right. And we'll just let that go, Lawrence. I'm only just trying to propose a question to you, a simple question. You know, do you think he should stop highlighting these? And you're saying it's not going on. So as far as you're concerned, Lawrence, you've answered me.
I want to answer that question. If you'll shut up a minute, I'll be happy to answer that question. It's not that I want him to stop. It's that the native people in Canada have come out en masse and asked him to stop.
Where's the evidence?
He's appropriating their culture and their voice.
Where's the evidence for this?
These native leaders. Listen to me. Let me answer your question, okay? If you're going to ask the question, let me answer it.
Well, I don't have to, man. I've had enough of you, but it's dumb shit.
I'm going to answer the question. These native leaders have come out and asked him to stop doing this.
So those people that were in the video hidden from history, those natives
can I get a word in?
About the abuse they suffered in that
Can I get a word in?
They were lying, were they?
Hang on. My show, right? Hang on. Allegedly, I'm the host, and I wouldn't mind a word at this point, right? Now, the thing is, people can get irate when information actually goes back and forth like that, disagreements and things like that. And I'm quite capable of looking outside the box and seeing all the angles of it. And you've got this guy who's going around saying a lot of information about what everyone already knows is truly going on. We've got corrupt governments, and he's trying to do something about it. Now, what you're claiming, Lawrence, is that he's hitched up onto this story by walking around with some bones, which he says are the children's bones, which have been proven to be animal bones. And this evidence was on that link that you talked about earlier, which I'll add to the YouTube link when we put it up anyway. And I'll add Kevin's information up just to make it fair. I think that all sides of the story should be addressed. And sometimes it can get very heated. Sometimes I get sucked in myself. But when we get heated and we start raising that vibration, we're not going to find any remedy and what is truly going on. So what I'd suggest to do is, like, if we could stick to the facts, then what facts have we got that he is doing something wrong?
Okay, here's a fact. Native leader Frank Miller, who's the chief of the Mohawk Reserve up in Brantford, where Kevin Annett did his dig, has put a film out on YouTube where he's sitting with a bunch of other Native leaders who have asked Kevin Annett to stop doing what he's doing because he doesn't speak for them. The stories that he's appropriated, he's exaggerated to the point of them being outright lies and fabrications. Kevin Annett goes to Europe with these stories about how the natives are having genocide committed on them. And, people in England and Ireland, they take his word for it at face value. Well, I live in Canada. I know Native people. We have a lot of Native people here. And most of them do not support Kevin Annett. Take a woman like Lydia Whitehorse, for example. This is a Native woman whose husband is very prominent in the Native American, the American Indian movement. As a matter of fact, he was one of the people who was at Wounded Knee. And, for years she was a supporter of Kevin Annett. He abused her. He took tens of thousands of dollars off of these people. She paid for more than one trip to Europe, and she's come out and publicly...
Is there proof of this online as well, though?
Sorry?
Is there proof of this online that he's fleeced people of tens of thousands?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you read some of the articles at the Jen Whitty site or on Heather Martin's blog, contact Lydia Whitehorse, or her husband. These people are on Facebook. These people speak out publicly against Kevin Annett. Look up a YouTube film with Chief Frank Miller talking. And
I'm quite welcome to, in the future as well, is to get these parties back on, welcome on to speak their truths and find out what the truth of the matter is on this. It is quite an interesting story, and they've got thousands upon thousands of hits with what's going on with other things. Do you know about another subject, the OPPT, that's just flown out there, gone viral?
Well, the truth of the matter is that, politically speaking right now, we have the same people that brought us Occupy started a movement called Idle No More here in Canada. I don't know whether you've heard of it or not, but it claims to represent the Native people, and it doesn't. There's a lot of socialists, Occupy-type socialists, who have been running around appropriating Native culture, like Kevin Annett, and are using it as a political weapon to convince people that somehow the government is evil. Was there a genocide amongst the native people? Well, yeah, a long time ago, long before any of us were born, and right up until the mid-'60s, they did have these native residential schools. They were eventually closed down. Everybody saw how evil they were. But some of the stories that Kevin Annett tells are, totally ludicrous. They're totally made up stories that, the thing is some of the most outrageous stories are from people who have died. They're not around anymore to call bullshit on Kevin Annett because they're dead.
Are there in Canada, where he's talking about, are there mass graves? Is that one fact that everyone can agree on?
There's not any mass graves that were hidden that people haven't found. During the turn of the century, a lot of these children did die in these residential schools. A lot of them died of typhus and diseases that everybody died of at the turn of the century. The fact that they took all these children and crowded them into these native residential schools, it was like a cooking pot for diseases like typhus and smallpox and things like that. Sure. And I don't want to downplay the fact that the government in Canada and the United States has a very long history of treating the native people.
Lawrence, I think Prajna's got a on-topic question that he wants to butt in with at the moment. Praj?
Actually, it's me again. How you doing?
Okay, yep.
I just wanted to point out, in answer to what Lauren's talking about now, if anyone wants to take a look at the documentary that Kevin made called Hidden from History, there's an awful lot of native people talking about the abuse that they personally suffered in those schools, in the residential schools, and talking about being deliberately exposed to these diseases, smallpox and TB and such like, that they were deliberately exposed to. And this is first-hand witness evidence. And so, well, I just wanted to put that out there, really. There is first-hand witness evidence being provided by Kevin.
But before you come back on that, Lawrence, I think Bob wanted to come in as well.
Yeah. Hi, Lawrence. Take two. My question is, do you agree that under Vatican law they are supporting paedophilia today? Thank you.
Second question first. I know very little of Vatican law. I'm not a Catholic, and frankly, I don't think that the Vatican is any more legitimate than any other government in the world. I'm sure they're corrupt. There's huge scandal in the Catholic Church. You don't need Kevin Annett to point this out to you. Everybody knows it.
Can I just say to the chat room?
I wasn't asking you about Kevin. I was asking you about you. It's just a yes or no answer, but that's okay, man.
I believe people that commit pedophilia should go to jail for it, no matter who they are.
Perhaps you should have a look at Vatican law. Maybe.
Well, I'm not a Catholic,
Canon law,
but I look at.
Oh, excuse me, Dom. You are correct. Yeah, thanks.
Right, yeah. Basically, if there's anyone in the chat room, because it'd be easier for you to Google. We've got about 10 minutes left. Can somebody actually find this canon law that Kevin Annett was talking about?
Here's what you don't understand. I don't support the Catholic Church. I don't support pedophilia. I'm not saying this stuff isn't true. Okay, a lot of the things that Kevin speaks about in his film Hidden from History are people that said, hey, when I was a small child and I was in these residential schools, terrible things happened, and the priests were diddling children. I'm not saying that didn't happen. Sure, it's true. It's absolutely true. But what good is Kevin Annett doing these people? Okay, we know that it happened. These people know that it happened. The church knows that it happened. But why does Kevin Annett need money to run around the world screaming about it?
Well, to let people know what happened, actually. To let the rest of us know what it is that our ruling elites are actually doing and have been doing throughout history to raise consciousness and awareness. Because knowledge is power. We need to know what we're up against, then we can claim back our power for ourselves.
And Lawrence, you're busy tearing down the people that are bringing this into public awareness, to not tearing down the fucking institutions that carried out all these crimes. Have you ever looked at yourself and said, why am I turning around attacking all the truth movement instead of attacking the actual institutions that are used to create
you get me wrong, friend. I'm in the truth movement. I'm a writer and activist. I work with people in the truth movement every day. I work with Dan Dix of Press for Truth. I work with the Canadian Awareness Network. There's a very, very strong truth movement in Canada. What we're trying to do is weed out the people that are using the truth movement to play their own agenda out. And that's what Kevin Annett is doing. Kevin Annett is not part of the truth movement. Kevin Annett is taking advantage of the truth movement.
Can I ask what you think his agenda is in exposing these crimes of church and state?
Money, fame, power. Money, mostly.
So how much money do you think he's actually made from the truth movement, given that he's only had a really high profile in very recent months? And
this is one thing.
Hang
on. This is one thing where we can actually look more at facts. We've only got like a few minutes left, and Lawrence, please. Right, the thing is, if we look at facts, and one of the best things to follow is the money. I realised that at Occupy, follow the money, and that took me into a realm of information. Now, we use things like Companies House and Dun & Bradstreet to look up if things are companies. Maybe people can start doing digging and find certain stuff out. Maybe there's nothing in it at all. But at the end of the day, is it going to get any remedy arguing who's right and wrong at the end of the day? What can we do? Because to stop this corrupt world is my problem. I see the solutions for myself, but what is the mass solution? And that's one thing. Pardon?
I think the solution is to raise awareness of what is going on and has been going on for centuries on so many levels and so many fronts. The solution is to raise awareness so that people can pull themselves out of those power structures.
Right. Well, telling people they've got problems that they didn't know exist, I don't think we'll be raising much awareness. But to offer them.
Telling people that their mortgage is a fraud, that's, all that sort of awareness raising, telling people how these systems work, how these institutions work, to keep them in their place,
I'm totally with you. Like, the thing is, I've done it for so many years, telling people how this corrupt system is, but I do sometimes wonder what I'm actually going to change in the future. What I know within law, the legal system, the healthcare, cures, things like that. This is all getting taken away from us, getting registered, and I don't know. We're coming to the end of the show, and hopefully next week we'll have something more solution-based to focus on. But it has been absolutely wonderful, anyone. Any last words from any one of you?
I have some last words.
Go on in quickly.
This is the truth movement. You don't further the cause of the truth movement by telling lies and defrauding people. I believe that's what Kevin Annett is. There are solutions. I believe that yes, our world is being run by evil bankers and corporations. you know, and the only way to really stop things is to cut off the money. You know, they're ruling us by money. We need to take money out of the hands of the private bankers and put it back in the hands of the people. Those amongst us who are using the movement for their own personal gain should be expelled Canada to hurt the real cause, which is their history.
Okay, I'd like to say to everybody that's listening in, we've got the Dark City. What we got, Dawn afterwards, or is it the Dark City crew?
It's Dawn's Sunday night diorama.
So if you want the truth, go to
Dark City Radio.
I want to get a topic, and I want to get stoned as well, and I want to be an hippie, but so I need some inspiration and, you know, some positivity to get me ready. Steering us off into the fucking oblivion to venture down a post office, the dreaded post office, which is far worse than fucking Argos. Well, that's about it.